Ladies and gentlemen, the Belt and Road Summit will begin shortly. May I ask everyone to take a seat as soon as possible? 各位来宾，欢迎莅临2022“一带一路”高峰論壇，活動即將開始，請各位來賓盡快就座。歡迎大家嚟臨2022一帶一路高峰論壇，活動即將開始，請咁多位嘉賓盡快就座，多謝合作。Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable John Casey Lee, the Chief Executive of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region, and other guests are now getting ready, and they will enter the summit venue. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable John Casey Lee, the Chief Executive of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region, and other guests will now enter the summit venue. 各位来宾，我们热烈欢迎香港特别行政区行政长官李家超先生以及其他嘉宾进场。Let's give them a warm welcome. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Vinci, and I'm pleased to be your MC for today. Welcome to the Belt and Road Summit 2022, jointly organized by the government of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region and the Hong Kong Trade Development Council. This summit is a celebration event of the 25th anniversary of the establishment of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region. So thank you so much for joining us here physically here at Hong Kong and even online from all over the world. 各位来宾，大家早上好，欢迎莅临由香港特别行政区政府以及香港贸易发展局主办的2022一带一路高峰论坛。May we now invite Dr. Peter Lam, Chairman of the Hong Kong Trade Development Council, to deliver the welcome remarks for us. Dr. Lam, please. 现在我们恭请香港贸易发展局主席林建岳博士为我们致欢迎词，有请林主席。
行政长官，还有王部长，郝主任，林念修先生，副主任，先生们、女士们，早上好。我欢迎大家来参加“一带一路”高峰论坛，由香港特别行政区政府跟香港贸易发展局联合主办。今年的高峰论坛尤其意义重大，因为它是其中一个庆祝香港特别行政区回归祖国的25周年的一个纪念活动。我们非常荣幸请来了我们国务院的副总理来给我们韩正先生来给我们支持。一带一路是一个全球的一个倡议要倡导全世界的发展。现在世界上面对很多不同的挑战战争气候变化，还有更多其他的这一些威胁。在这个艰难的时候，我们需要携手合作，我们需要寻找新的方法去解决这一些问题。这也是为什么我们今年的主题是携手共创新篇章。携手合作就是一个主要的主题。一带一路呢，把不同的国家带在一起，不仅仅是通过实际的基础建设，而且也通过知识、信息跟资金的流动来达到这个目的。这一个倡议呢，提供了一个框架去创新，去创造一个可持续的未来。也因为这样，尽管我们未来挑战重重，我们无可置疑的携手合作跟创新可以让我们共度难关。其中一个机遇呢，就是来自广东、香港、澳门大湾区的机遇。那这个呢是构成了国家的 GDP 的11%。另外一个长期的机会呢，就是最近的区域全面经济合作伙伴关系。那这RCEP， 那这一个呢，包括了全球的 GDP 的30%的区域要加强它的商贸的连接，把这一些重要的元素连接一起的，就是香港。
And opens up a new chapter in the regional economic ties. Linking these important elements together is Hong Kong. With our strategic location and our positions as global financial center and mainland China's international gateway, Hong Kong has always created opportunities by bringing together people, knowledge, and capital. This is precisely the aim of our summit. Eminent speakers from governments, business, academia will share their valuable insights on a range of topics from policy, cooperation, to sustainable development, risk management, and much more. Project owners, investors, and professionals can find ways to cooperate for success, and young people can learn and be inspired from a special sections featuring young business leaders and startups. Ladies and gentlemen, with such a gathering of great minds, this summit will help us work together towards creating a sustainable and inclusive future. Before I close, I would like to thank all our speakers, sponsors, partners, and our audience here in Hong Kong and around the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lam. Please be seated. 再一次感谢林主席的欢迎词，谢谢，请回座。Coming up next, we would like to invite the Honorable John Lee, the Chief Executive of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region, to deliver the opening address for us. Mr. Lee, please. 现在我们恭请香港特别行政区行政长官李家超先生为我们致开幕词，有请行政长官。
Honorable Vice Premier Han Zheng, Director Luo Huiling, Liaison Office of the Central People's Government in Hong Kong SAR, Acting Commissioner Yang Yurui, Office of the Commissioner of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the Hong Kong SAR, Mr. Peter Lam, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning from Hong Kong, and good day to those of you joining from abroad. I warmly welcome you all to the 7th Belt and Road Summit. We are deeply honored by the support of our keynote speaker, the Honorable Vice Premier Han Zheng, who will grace the summit with a video address shortly. On behalf of the Hong Kong SAR government, I thank the Central People's Government for its strong support to us in hosting this annual occasion to tell the good story of the Belt and Road Initiative. Just as President Xi Jinping said on July the 1st when gracing the Hong Kong SAR's 25th anniversary, Hong Kong's close connection with the world and strong support from the motherland are its distinctive advantages, and the central government fully supports Hong Kong in carrying out more extensive exchanges and close cooperation with the rest of the world. We are also most privileged by the presence of our eminent speakers and participants. This two-day summit has attracted more than 6,000 participants in person and online. You will hear from some 80 high-profile speakers from Hong Kong, the mainland of China, throughout Asia, and all over the world. The summit is also among the major events this year, marking the 25th anniversary of the establishment of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region. It is a proud moment for Hong Kong as we transition from turmoil to order. With stability regained, Hong Kong is ushering in future filled with opportunities. Hong Kong is determined to seize that future, despite the threats posed by the COVID-19 epidemic. The slowdown in global economic growth, supply chain disruptions, inflation, and a more challenging operating environment are just some of the issues that face Hong Kong and the world at large. I believe the way forward is there for us, for all of us, in the theme of this year's summit, heralding a new chapter, collaborate and innovate. Hong Kong is a long-standing supporter and practitioner of free market and multilateralism. We believe in reducing trade barriers and ensuring the free flow of goods and services, people and capital. In deepening collaboration and pursuing innovation at every level, markets open, business flows, economies and companies expand, the gains are mutually beneficial. Economic liberalization in Southeast Asia and the mainland over the past few decades has enabled high efficiency, lower costs for consumers and producers, job creation, higher purchasing power, market expansion, and robust economic progress. A growing consensus among international economies is that the center of global economic gravity has shifted to Asia. Economic expansion in the region prior to the epidemic was being realized at breakneck speed. The mainland of China and ASEAN average annual GDP growth of 6.3% and 4.4% respectively between 2011 and 2020 are significantly higher than the global average of 2.4% over the same period. Indeed, they have become the second and fifth largest economic entities in the world. The global rise of protectionism has reminded us of how important regional cooperation is. We have to work together for the better future of the region. Hong Kong is therefore very pleased to see the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCEP, came into force early this year. The landmark agreement underlines the open, inclusive, rules-based trade and investment partnership that RCEP's member states are committed to realizing. We believe that regional economic integration is an essential complement to multilateral trade. Hong Kong is seeking early accession to RCEP. Our close and mutually rewarding relationships with RCEP economies run long and deep and extend well beyond business and investment. We are closely linked as well by culture, education, tourism, and even culinary delights. Joining RCEP is a natural step for Hong Kong. It will enable us to deepen the collaboration and commitments we enjoy with our best close partners. The Belt and Road is also built on collaboration and covers an even wider spectrum of connectivity. It brings about infrastructure creation. It brings about trade and investment cooperation. It brings about profound benefits and unleashes wide-ranging development potential. Essentially, the Belt and Road is helping to improve people's lives and create opportunities for common prosperity in countries all over the world. Since the initiative was launched by President Xi Jinping in 2013, it has inspired regional and international collaboration among over 180 countries and international organizations, covering policy, infrastructure, trade, finance, and people-to-people bonds. In Hong Kong, various Belt and Road collaboration programs have been established, and the government has partnered with the Hong Kong Trade Development Council, as well as business chambers and associations, to provide Belt and Road networking opportunities for companies and professionals. A global city, an international financial and trade center, and the business bridge between our country and the rest of the world, Hong Kong is the pivotal gateway for all of us. For Belt and Road companies and economies and the projects they partner in, Hong Kong has it all. Project financing and professional services support, innovation and technology, capacity building, cultural awareness, wide-ranging connections, and much more. The Belt and Road is inclusive, and so is Hong Kong. We invite the world to work with us together. Despite the pandemic, our financial system remains resilient to market volatility. Consider this. At the end of last year, the capital adequacy ratio of our major banks exceeded 20%, and the average liquidity coverage ratio exceeded 150%. Both are well above international standards. Our foreign reserve at $447.3 billion is equivalent to about 130% of our GDP. That ensures that our financial market is reinforced with the buffers and resilience necessary to counter global financial and political shocks. Ladies and gentlemen, the Belt and Road has created to build connectivity, to bring business and people together. No one does that better than Hong Kong, thanks to our one country, two system principles. Thanks to our long-standing East meets West experience and the boundless opportunities afforded us in national development. That's abundantly clear throughout the summit's program, with its spotlight on Hong Kong's role not only in the Belt and Road, but also in the Greater Bay Area. The summit will also reflect the strengths and uniqueness of Hong Kong. In the difference we will make, the value we can bring to both national development as well as to the future of RCEP. For that and much more, I'm grateful to the Hong Kong Trade Development Council for co-organizing this summit with the Hong Kong SAR government. I wish you all a rewarding Belt and Road Summit and the best of health.
和政府的领导来自“一带一路”国家，他们会分享政策制定，还有合作建立方面的机会。那么，怎样可以推动区域的合作和联系？特别呢，针对这个大湾区的发展，还有 RCEP。女士们、先生们，下面呢，
女士们、先生们、朋友们，大家好。很高兴出席第7届“一带一路”高峰论坛。首先，我谨代表中国政府对论坛的召开表示热烈的祝贺，对线上、线下参会的嘉宾表示诚挚的欢迎。2013年秋天，习近平主席提出共建“一带一路”倡议，符合世界上绝大部分国家谋求发展繁荣的共同愿望，得到了国际社会广泛认同和热情参与。9年来，中国与有关国家一道积极推进各领域务实合作，共建“一带一路”取得实打实、沉甸甸的成就。 目前已有180多个国家和国际组织与中国签署了合作文件。中国对沿线国家的贸易总额累计超过10万亿美元，直接投资超过1400亿美元。一些重大项目缓解了部分共建国家面临的发展瓶颈，有效实现了互利共赢。共建“一带一路”倡议已成为具有广泛影响力和包容性的国际经济合作平台，展现出强大的韧性和生命力。香港是共建“一带一路”的积极参与者、贡献者，也是受益者。我们高兴地看到，“一带一路”倡议提出以来，香港积极与共建国家商签合作协议，开展贸易投资合作、服务标准联通、国际金融合作和人文交流，在参与和助力“一带一路”建设上发挥了重要作用，也拓展了自身的发展空间，工作是值得充分肯定的。女士们、先生们、朋友们，今年7月1日，习近平主席在视察香港期间发表了重要讲话，指出当前香港正处在由乱到治、走向由治及兴的新阶段，中央将长期坚持“一国两制”方针，完全支持香港长期保持独特地位和优势，全力支持香港积极参与和助力“一带一路”建设。希望香港继续主动作为，推动与共建国家开展更多的务实合作。香港具有背靠祖国、连通世界的显著优势，是“一带一路”建设的重要节点。我们支持香港巩固国际金融、航运、贸易中心的地位，维护自由开放、规范的营商环境，拓展畅通便捷的国际联系，与更多国家开展更紧密的交流合作，扩大经贸合作网络。希望香港做强专业服务，打造“一带一路”综合服务平台。香港的服务业专业化优势明显，发展空间广阔。我们支持香港保持普通法制度，发展高增值的航运服务业，完善金融服务与合作，为“一带一路”建设提供法律、航运、金融、咨询等专业服务，巩固和提高香港在国际分工中的竞争力。希望香港加强人文交流，促进“一带一路”沿线民心相通。长期以来，香港就是东西文化交流的重要窗口，形成了特色鲜明的人文积淀。我们支持香港继续以多种形式参与和共建国家的人文交流，扩大教育科技合作，吸引更多的学生、学者赴港留学研学，发挥对外文化交流窗口作用，促进文化相融、民心相通。希望香港深化与内地合作，更加积极主动融入国家发展大局。香港回归祖国以来，内地与香港交流合作领域全面拓展，机制不断完善。我们支持香港继续深入对接共建“一带一路”倡议，抓住陆海新通道建设的重要机遇，加强与内地各省区市合作，创新合作方式，提升合作水平，共同开辟“一带一路”市场。女士们、先生们、朋友们，共建“一带一路”这个倡议源于中国，惠及世界。9年来的成功实践和丰硕成果充分证明， 这是一条合作共赢、共同发展之路。中国将坚持共商共建共享原则，以高标准、可持续、惠民生为目标，继续加强与共建国家务实合作，巩固互联互通合作基础，稳步拓展合作新领域，坚定不移推进“一带一路”高质量发展，与共建国家携手推进构建人类命运共同体。最后，祝本次论坛取得圆满成功，谢谢大家。
尊敬的韩正副总理，尊敬的李家超行政长官，各位嘉宾、女士们、先生们、朋友们，大家上午好！很高兴和大家在云端相聚，共同出席香港第7届“一带一路”高峰论坛，围绕携手共创新篇章主题，畅谈共建“一带一路”高质量发展。首先，我谨代表商务部对本届论坛的召开表示衷心的祝贺。共建“一带一路”倡议提出9年来，商务部会同有关方面与相关国家建立了超过100个贸易畅通、投资合作、服务贸易、电子商务合作机制。中国与“一带一路”沿线国家贸易额2021年达到了1.8万亿美元，双向投资累计超过2300亿美元，在沿线国家承包工程累计完成营业额近7300亿美元。中老铁路、比雷埃夫斯港等一批重要的合作项目建成投运，一批小而美的民生项目相继落地，得到了各方的广泛的赞誉。商务部也一如既往支持香港参与共建“一带一路”。去年9月，我们签署了关于推进境外经贸合作区高质量发展合作备忘录，支持两地的企业共同参与境外经贸合作区建设，同时发挥两地经贸合作委员会作用，举办线上交流活动，支持两地企业拼船出海。女士们、先生们，去年11月，习近平主席在第3次“一带一路”建设座谈会上发表重要讲话，对继续推动共建“一带一路”高质量发展做出了全面部署。不久前，习近平主席出席庆祝香港回归祖国25周年大会，提出了建设美好香港的4点希望。商务部将认真贯彻习近平主席重要讲话精神，按照韩正副总理在今天讲话中提出的要求，继续支持香港发挥自身独特优势，深度参与共建“一带一路”，在融入国家发展大局中实现更好发展。第一，支持香港巩固提升国际贸易中心地位，深化贸易畅通。我们将积极发挥香港重要贸易通道作用，支持香港参与进博会等重要展会，加快发展贸易新业态新模式，促进内地大市场和国际优质商品服务的联通对接。第二，支持香港巩固提升国际金融中心地位，深化资金融通。我们将积极发挥香港重要的投资通道作用，通过 RCEP 进一步扩大开放，并鼓励内地产品、技术、标准和服务，以及内地有实力的企业通过香港走出去，拓展双向投资。第三，支持香港巩固提升国际航运中心地位，深化设施联通。 我们将积极发挥香港航线和航路优势，强化连通内外的枢纽功能，积极推动与沿线国家海天相连，维护全球区域产业链供应链的稳定畅通。第四，支持香港发挥以国际高标准经贸规则顺畅衔接优势，深化政策沟通。我们将积极发挥香港自由开放规范营商环境的优势，支持香港尽早加入 RCEP， 拓展区域经济合作，提升贸易投资自由化便利化水平。第五，支持香港发挥畅通便捷的国际联系优势，深化民心相通。我们将积极发挥香港亚太区国际法律及解决争议服务中心作用，协调解决投资争端，拓展广泛的朋友圈。我相信，在中央政府的坚强领导下，在内地与香港各界的共同努力下，两地经贸合作必将不断取得新发展，共建“一带一路”高质量发展必将不断迈出新步伐，迎来更加美好的明天。最后，预祝本次论坛取得圆满成功，谢谢大家。
尊敬的韩正副总理，尊敬的李家超行政长官，女士们、先生们、朋友们，大家好！很高兴与大家相聚云端，通过视频方式参加第7届“一带一路”高峰论坛。在世界经济形势复杂严峻的大背景下，在香港走向由治及兴的新阶段的重要时刻，香港特区政府和香港贸发局以携手共创新篇章为主题，邀请全球政商各界代表围绕共建“一带一路”共商合作、共谋发展，必将有力促进香港经济社会繁荣稳定，为世界经济复苏增添信心和力量。在此，我谨代表国务院国资委对论坛成功举办表示热烈祝贺。去年11月，习近平主席在第3次“一带一路”建设座谈会上发表重要讲话，强调要以高标准、可持续、惠民生为目标，努力实现更高合作水平、更高投入效益、更高供给质量、更高发展韧性，推动共建“一带一路”高质量发展不断取得新成效。今年7月，习近平主席在庆祝香港回归祖国25周年大会上提出4个必须原则和4点希望，为中央企业与香港携手高质量共建“一带一路”提供了根本的遵循。近年来，国务院国资委深入贯彻习近平主席重要指示，指导推动中央企业积极参与“一带一路”建设，承担项目超过了3400个，在基础设施建设、能源资源开发、国际产能合作等领域，打造了一批具有示范性和带动性的重大项目和标志性工程，成为高质量共建“一带一路”的重要力量。在中央企业参与共建“一带一路”的过程中，香港作为重要的国际金融、贸易、航运中心，发挥着重要而独特的作用。不少香港企业、金融机构、专业服务机构为中央企业“一带一路”项目提供投融资、工程建设咨询、合约谈判、法律事务、会计审计等服务。香港已经成为中央企业参与共建“一带一路”的重要伙伴和桥梁纽带。 女士们、先生们、朋友们，今年正值香港回归祖国25周年，特区政府在李家超行政长官带领下，正满怀信心地同为香港开新篇。应李家超行政长官之邀，国资委组织41家中央企业参与本届论坛各项活动，愿以此为契机，进一步将央企所能与香港所长紧密结合，推动区域和国际经贸合作取得更多务实的成果，为促进全球经济发展做出积极贡献。我们全力支持中央企业同香港一道在高质量共建“一带一路”中拓展发展空间。香港背靠祖国，连通世界，拥有一国两制的独特优势，发展空间十分广阔。我们愿以粤港澳大湾区建设为契机，充分发挥香港在国家改革开放大局中的桥梁与窗口作用，推动中央企业深度融入地区和全球生产服务网络，在基建、能源、交通、通讯等领域共建共享，探索建立与“一带一路”国家，特别是周边国家的新兴合作模式，更好助力国内国际双循环相互促进、高效畅通。我们全力支持中央企业同香港一道在高质量共建“一带一路”中提升发展水平。香港市场化程度高，营商环境世界一流。我们愿借助香港自由开放的优良环境，充分发挥香港在金融、法律、会计、设计、监理等方面的专业优势，推动更多符合条件的中央企业在港上市、发债、设立财资中心、自保公司、地区总部、贸易平台等，提升企业资本运作、风险管理、公司治理和国际化经营的水平，共同实现高质量的发展。我们全力支持中央企业同香港一道在高质量共建“一带一路”中增强发展动能。香港科研基础实力强，这是香港未来可持续发展的强大引擎。我们愿推动中央企业更好地融入香港国际创新科技中心的建设，发挥中央企业行业分布广、应用场景多、孵化能力强等优势，与香港深化产学研用协同，强化产业链、价值链中高端环节合作，携手参与“一带一路”科技创新行动计划，共同在数字经济、绿色经济、健康经济等领域与全球各国加强合作，为香港和全球经济发展注入新的动力。女士们、先生们、朋友们，习近平主席指出，未来5年是香港开创新局面、实现新飞跃的关键期。国资委和中央企业将一如既往坚决贯彻一国两制方针，坚定支持李家超行政长官和香港特区政府依法施政、积极作为，坚定支持香港发展经济、改善民生，与香港一道与世界同行、风雨同舟、携手共进，共同创造香港更加美好的明天，共同谱写人类命运共同体的华美乐章。预祝本届论坛圆满成功，谢谢大家。
尊敬的韩正副总理，尊敬的李家超行政长官，各位嘉宾、女士们、先生们、朋友们，大家好。很高兴通过视频方式参加第7届香港“一带一路”高峰论坛，与新老朋友在线上相聚交流。今年是香港回归祖国25周年，也是共建“一带一路”倡议提出9周年。举办本次论坛，对于进一步发挥香港优势，更好参与 和助力共建“一带一路”高质量发展，具有重要意义。在此，我谨代表推进“一带一路”建设工作领导小组办公室和国家发展改革委对本次论坛的举办表示热烈祝贺。实打实、沉甸甸的巨大成就。2017年，国家发展改革委与香港特区政府签署了关于支持香港全面参与和助力“一带一路”建设的安排。5年来，香港充分发挥独特功能平台作用，参与和助力共建“一带一路”各项工作取得了积极进展。在贸易投资合作方面，特区政府与12个共建“一带一路”国家签订自贸协议，与18个共建“一带一路”国家签订投资协议。在服务标准联通方面，亚非法律协商委员会在港设立区域仲裁中心，国际航运工会、波罗的海国际航运工会将香港列为指定仲裁地。在金融合作方面，香港在境外人民币支付交易中占比超过75%，并与内地合作推出沪港通、深港通、债券通，为共建国家开展投融资合作提供了重要通道。在人文交流方面，香港充分发挥“一带一路”奖学金作用，有力推动香港青年与共建国家青年开展双向交流。女士们、先生们、朋友们，当前，香港正处在从由乱到治走向由治及兴的新阶段。7月1日，习近平主席在庆祝香港回归祖国25周年大会及香港特别行政区第6届政府就职典礼上发表重要讲话，对香港发展提出明确要求，寄予殷切希望。国家发展改革委将认真贯彻落实习近平主席重要讲话精神，全力支持香港在新的历史起点上把握机遇，找准定位，发挥好独特优势，更好参与和助力共建“一带一路”，更好融入国家发展大局。第一，着力巩固提升3大中心地位，在参与和助力共建“一带一路”中 取得新成效。一是依托国际金融中心优势，进一步畅通融资渠道，为我海外项目多元化融资发挥更大作用。二是依托国际航运中心优势，着力巩固和拓展全球航运网络，为维护国际产业链供应链稳定发挥更大作用。三是依托国际贸易中心优势，深度参与区域经济合作，为加快建设贸易强国发挥更大作用。第二，着力聚焦重点发展领域，在共建“一带一路”国际合作中培育新优势。一是聚焦大力发展专业服务，发挥香港在设计咨询、财务会计、法律和仲裁调解等领域的独特优势，为共建“一带一路”提供信息共享、标准兼容、检测认证、项目融资、争议解决等服务。二是聚焦稳步推进人民币国际化，支持香港建立离岸人民币生态系统，不断扩大跨境贸易人民币结算规模，为共建国家企业和金融机构提供高效便捷的汇兑、结算等服务。三是聚焦深入推进科技创新，加快建设国际创新科技中心、区域知识产权贸易中心，助力共建数字丝绸之路和创新丝绸之路。第三，着力促进国内国际双循环，在共建“一带一路”高质量发展中做出新贡献。一是进一步深化粤港澳互利共赢合作，加强规则衔接、机制对接，促进人员、货物、资金等要素高效流动，共同将粤港澳大湾区打造为“一带一路”建设重要支撑区。二是充分发挥与国际联系紧密、海外资源网络丰富的优势，加快引进国际资本、先进技术、管理经验和高素质人才，服务国家发展大局，推动共建“一带一路”行稳致远。女士们、先生们、朋友们，长风破浪会有时，直挂云帆济沧海。支持香港参与和助力共建“一带一路”，是国家实行高水平对外开放的重要举措，也是促进内地和香港优势互补、共同发展的重要途径。我们坚信，有伟大祖国的坚定支持，有一国两制方针的坚实保障，有香港各界的不懈努力，香港必将再创东方之珠新的辉煌，在中华民族伟大复兴的新征程中做出新的更大贡献。谢谢大家。
Thank you, Vice Chairman Lin. 谢谢林副主任。Ladies and gentlemen, to wrap up our opening session, last but not the least, we are very honored to have a keynote address by Mr. Zhang Xiangchen, Deputy Director General of World Trade Organization at this year's summit. Let's now hear from Mr. Zhang.
Dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure to speak at the Belt and Road Summit. I thank the government of Hong Kong Special Administrative Region and Hong Kong Trade Development Council for your kind invitation. Hong Kong is one of the most open and dynamic economies in the world. It is also a strong supporter of the multilateral trading system and the World Trade Organization. We thank Hong Kong for its active participation in the WTO activities and its remarkable contribution to the multilateral trading system. As the world's sixth largest exporter of goods and the third largest destination for foreign direct investments in 2021, Hong Kong's success The Belt and Road Summit brings together government officials and business leaders from different parts of the world to exchange insights on trade and economy. Organizing this summit fits in perfectly with the long strategy of promoting free trade. share my observations on international trade from the policy perspective and the role of WTO in addressing relevant challenges. Performance. Last week, WTO published its latest version of the Goods Trade Barometer. The report shows that the global goods trade continued to grow in the second quarter of 2020, but the growth pace was slower than in the first quarter and is likely to remain weak in the second half of the year. According to the WTO, to 3.2% in the first quarter of 2022 from 5.7% in the fourth quarter of 2021. The report gave a couple of reasons for the slowdown and the gloomy The report reflects the challenging trade environment faced by both the business community and the governments in our time. Having been working in the trade policy area for more than 30 years, I have a strong feeling that the international trade policy landscape is undergoing reshaping, which will have far-reaching effects on business. Let me elaborate on a few factors that are of significant weight in this process. First, the ongoing pandemic has been producing a significant effect both on business decisions of the private sectors and the trade policy made by governments. The COVID-19 pandemic has been there much longer than we had expected. In many countries, the COVID is gradually withdrawing from the public eye, and life and business are returning to the normal track, but the pandemic has not gone. In some parts of the world, the health situation is still and far-reaching. The immediate impact is the pandemic's unprecedented disruption of supply chains on a global scale during a certain period of time, such as severe shortage of labor and containers, the steep surge of freight rates, massive port congestions. In the long term, the pandemic has changed the enterprises and the government's perception of supply chain security. Investors take risks when locating their production lines and establishing their supply chains. Resilience against pandemics is one of the factors to be taken into consideration. On government side, the accessibility to essential medicines and health products becomes a policy priority. Export restriction introduced by some governments on certain such products and the chaotic procurement practice and competition between different importing countries reinforce should be relocated home or near shore, with the perception new administrative measures for the purpose of decentralization or relocalization of production have been introduced in some countries. Second, geopolitical tensions have been another factor that changes government's perception on national security. In the past few decades, the national security perception was based on the principle of free trade. The basic logic is that when goods flow freely across borders, and with the blessing of international free trade rules, governments are able to obtain relevant products even though they are not produced domestically. To achieve this goal, the WTO rules generally prohibit restrictive measures on imports and exports. Meanwhile, governments are allowed to take necessary actions for national security purposes. However, in recent years, due to rising geopolitical tensions, some governments are reviewing their perception on national security. For example, the conflicts in Ukraine have raised worldwide concerns about food security in night food importing and less well-off countries due to disruption of transportation and logistics and the surge of food price. The supply of fossil fuels is another area where disruption have been made by the conflicts. We don't know how long the conflicts in Ukraine will continue, and we do hope that it can be settled as soon as possible. Whatever it will be, the impact of these geopolitical tensions on trade will remain long. Similar to the response to the risks caused by the pandemic, many measures have been introduced to relocalize production of essential goods to cope with such tensions. Actually, the change of national security perception started well before the conflict in Ukraine. There were already measures introduced in some countries on high-tech products, such as 5G telecommunications technologies and products, basic pharmaceuticals, semiconductors, so on and so forth, while it is the legitimate right of every government to take necessary actions to protect their national security. The compatibility of relevant measures is a challenge faced by the multilateral trading system. More dialogues and cooperation are needed for WTO members to downplay their negative impact on the global supply chains. The third factor I would like to highlight is climate change. Climate change is not a new concern. The discussion centered on this topic has been going on for years. It has now become a widely recognized goal that the world economy should turn low carbon, green, and more sustainable, and collective actions by all countries are needed. Record-breaking temperatures and historical dry in many parts of the world reinforce both governments and the civil societies the determination to take actions. Trade and trade policy will be part of the toolbox. WTO rules give less weight to environmental considerations in the past. It is now working on new rules in this regard. However, it takes a long time before any proactive rules. Many countries are already introducing trade measures that take carbon dioxide emission into consideration. More are expected to follow up. How to ensure those measures compatible with WTO rules and the principles will be an issue to be reviewed by new regulations will be another challenge in their business practice. Carbon emission is just one of the most urgent environmental issues to be tackled. Trade measures in response to other environmental concerns would arise in the future. The last factor I would like to touch upon is the anti-globalization sentiments. Globalization has been the feature of the significantly changed the modality of production and trade by featuring global markets and global supply chains. Globalization helps achieve the optimal allocation of resources, lower the cost, and improve welfare of the whole human society. However, globalization has not always been on the upward. There were ups and downs. the current wave of globalization started in 1990s and has its golden time in its first decades. When I started my career 30 years ago, the WTO was a shining star in global governance. Major trading countries set the tone and led the way of WTO's work to significantly remove negotiations. People showed their support for WTO and free trade and set out a high ambition for the organization to produce new trade rules. WTO failed to deliver major outcomes to address issues set out in its agenda until its recent Ministerial Conference. Every time when WTO held its ministerial level negotiations, anti-globalization grew and more difficult for WTO members to reach consensus on trade issues, even on citing out the negotiation topics. This reflects the growing doubt about globalization. Anti-globalization even became a sentiment in many countries. There is something going wrong in globalization, but it's not that the globalization itself. Rather, it is the way that globalization is carried out. As I mentioned earlier, globalization is about the reallocation of production to achieve the optimal use of resources worldwide. This means that some groups will directly benefit from globalization and some others will lose. But overall, the whole human society will benefit as a result of increased efficiency and lowered costs. The concerns of the losing groups are legitimate and should be addressed sufficiently. Governments should take proactive actions to help those groups to adapt to the changes. When governments fail to do so, anti-globalization becomes a sentiment. Having said that, it's my strong belief that anti-globalization sentiments will not block the whole course of globalization. There will be setbacks, but the overall trend of major factors, I believe, that would affect the reshaping the future landscape of global trade policies. It's very challenging, but can still be managed well if I strongly encourage enhanced dialogues and cooperation between all governments to find collective solutions, because by one government alone, global challenges require global solutions. WTO has been working hard to respond to those challenges. The recent success of the 12th Ministerial Conference of the WTO is a good example. I would like to share with you the outcomes of the conference. First, let me highlight the overall background of the conference. Ministerial Conference is WTO's topmost decision-making body. It usually meets every 2 years. Negotiations of new trade rules is always the most important item on the scheduled to take place in June 2020, but was postponed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The Ministerial Conference usually discusses a whole range of trade topics. For example, tariff reduction for both agricultural products and manufactured goods, non-tariff barriers in trade in goods, rules, and subsidies to different industries, liberalization of sectors of trading services, domestic regulation issues, so on and so forth. Depending on the maturity of discussions of each topic in the lead up to the Ministerial Conference. This year's Ministerial Conference subsidies and the trade policy response to COVID-19 and other emergencies of our time. Following several days and nights, WTO members adopted a package of 10 decisions or declarations covering different topics. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic, members agreed to make access to medical supplies and components more predictable in the current and the future pandemics. They adopted a decision to waive developing countries' obligation to protect patents in relation to the production of COVID-19 vaccines. This decision will contribute to ongoing efforts to improve developing countries' vaccine manufacturing capacity. In response to the current food security crisis, members agree to more predictable and hence price less volatile. They also agree food and the World Food Program to help the most vulnerable people have access to food. On fishery subsidies, members reached an agreement to prohibit support for illegal, unreported, unregulated fishing. It also bans support for fishing in overfished stocks. This is the first time sustainability at its heart. The conference also agrees to extend the moratorium of custom duties on cross-border digital transmission, which will preserve the enabling environment for millions of business and the jobs that depends on e-commerce. More importantly, the outcomes of MC12 emergencies of our time. They show the world that WTO members can come together across geopolitical fault lines to global commons and to reinforce the institution. Actually, in addition to the outcomes of MC12, WTO has also been working intensively to discuss other trade issues, including not only the conventional ones such as tariff and agriculture subsidies, but also broader and new issues such as expanding opportunities for macro, small, and medium-sized enterprises to participate in international trade, digital in support of women empowerment, and trade and sustainable development. We hope that with the joint effort of all its membership, the WTO will maintain its role as a major rule-setting body, its contribution to addressing the common challenges in our time. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in a time of challenges and changes. Each of these challenges and changes require collective wisdom and joint efforts for appropriate solution. Belt and Road Summit serves as a great platform for us to reflect on those issues. I hope all participants opportunities for cooperation in this two-day event. I wish the summit a great success. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zhang. Ladies and gentlemen, here comes to the end of our opening session. The Honorable Mr. John Lee, the due to other engagements. Once again, a big round of applause to Chief Executive for joining us this morning. 行政长官李家超先生需要出席其他官方活动，需要先行离开。再一次以最热烈的掌声感谢行政长官出席我们今天的开幕式，谢谢。Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated while our honorable guests leaving the seminar hall now. 請咁多位嘉賓咧繼續就座啊！我哋嘅主禮嘉賓將會先行離場嘅，請其他嘉賓繼續就座，讓我們的主禮嘉賓先行離場，謝謝。We will now move to the next session, Policy Dialogue, Driving Growth Through Partnership and Collaboration, and this section will commence momentarily. This section will be conducted in English. Simultaneous interpretation in Putonghua is available. You can tune to Channel 2 for Putonghua. If you do not have a SI headset, please get one from the SI counter near the entrance. 以下的环节将会以英语进行，部分现场观众的座位上已经放有即时传译的耳机，频道2为普通话。如果阁下未有即时传译耳机，可以到门口附近的服务柜台领取。For participants joining us online, you can choose to hear the original languages of all speakers, English throughout or Putonghua throughout, by using the pull-down menu on top of the video screen. 线上参会的观众可以通过视频框上方的菜单选择收听现场声道、全英语声道或全普通话声道。During panel discussion session, if you have any questions for our speakers, you are very welcome to scan the QR code on the screen now and pose a question in the Q&A box next to the live streaming video frame. Selected questions will be addressed at the Q&A section towards the end. We will now move to the second session of this year's summit, the Policy Dialogue, Driving Growth Through Partnership and Collaboration. And this section will be moderated by the Honorable Michael Wong, Deputy Financial Secretary of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region. A big round of applause to welcome Mr. Wong onto the stage. Mr. Wong first joined the Hong Kong government as administrative officer and had served in various important positions, including Director of Information Services, Director of Marine, and was Permanent Secretary for Development Planning and Lands from 2015 to 2017. Mr. Wong served as Secretary for Development from July 2017 to June this year. He was appointed as a Deputy Financial Secretary on the 1st of July 2022. Now, I would like to introduce the three ministerial panelists who are joining us in person or live today. First, let us welcome Mr. Heng Swee Kit, Deputy Prime Minister and Coordinating Minister for Economic Policies of Singapore. Welcome. DPM Heng has extensive experience in formulating economic and development strategies in Singapore. Currently, DPM Heng is chair of the Future Economy Council, which oversees the ongoing restructuring in the country. In addition, he is chairman of the National Research Foundation, overseeing the closer integration of Singapore's RIE, research, innovation, and enterprises strategies and industry transformation efforts. Now, let us welcome His Excellency Lim Sidanin, Secretary of State, Ministry of Public Works and Transport of Cambodia. Welcome, His Excellency Lim. Mr. Lim has served in different departments of the ministry since 1979 and became a head of department in 1999. He became Under Secretary of State in 2005 and Secretary of State in 2008. He has comprehensive experience in formulating strategies for public works and transportation. Mr. Lim was also one of the panelists in the ministerial dialogue session held in the 2018 summit. Last but not the least, let us welcome Mr. Chayotit Kritakon, Thai Trade Representative and Advisor to Prime Minister of Thailand, who will be joining our discussion online. Minister Office to accelerate investor attraction into Thailand. A big round of applause to welcome Mr. Chow to joining us online. Welcome. And today, we are also very privileged to have Mr. Luhut Binsar Panjatan, Coordinating Minister for Maritime and Investment Affairs of Indonesia, and also His Excellency Datuk Lim Bang Hong, Deputy Minister of International Trade and Industry of Malaysia, and they will be addressing us via video messages. Without further ado, I will now pass the time to our panelist chair, Mr. Wong. The floor is now yours.
Thank you. I would like to begin by once again paying tribute to the 5 most distinguished speakers for taking part in this policy dialogue and for sharing with us their insightful views about how we can work together to drive growth and partnership and collaboration in this challenging. Before they start, I would also like to share a few quick thoughts myself. As our Chief Executive, Mr. John Lee, pointed out in his remarks just a moment ago, a growing consensus among international economists is that the center of global economic gravity has shifted to Asia. And yet the rise of protectionism and I believe that an effective answer to push back against protectionism can be found in our continued rigorous efforts to nurture and enhance collaboration among economies, and especially among those that continue to believe in the value of partnership and continue to an inclusive vision. Simply put, we have to work together in a mutually beneficial partnership for a better common future for everyone. In this sense, Belt and Road is a most timely and relevant initiative. President Xi Jinping pointed out very clearly at the Boao Forum for Asia last year that not a private path of one party. All interested economies and enterprises can join and participate, cooperate and benefit together, unquote. If you ask me, I think some of the keywords are everyone, all, and together. In other words, Belt and Road is characterized by openness and inclusiveness. And it is perfectly aligned with the vision of broadening and deepening regional economic collaboration. Hong Kong fully embraces these values and vision, and we stand ready to work alongside economies that similarly share them. You will note that the 5 speakers in this policy dialogue, they all come from ASEAN economies. To Hong Kong, ASEAN is a good example of how economic collaboration and partnership have achieved a rising share of global output, accompanied by an also increasing share of foreign direct investment. And Hong Kong has benefited our second largest merchandising trading partners since the year 2010, and the 3rd largest in services trade in 2020. The total value of our merchandise trade in 2021 grew by 20% over the previous year, which is really remarkable considering the challenges posed by the epidemic situation. To Hong Kong, ASEAN is a great friend and would like to continue to develop our economic and trade ties with all ASEAN economies, including in the context of the Belt and Road Initiative. A quick word on a key part of this significant trade collaboration effort. And according to the Asian Development Bank, RCEP could increase global $3 billion by the year 2030. From the perspective of Hong Kong, we would like to see a highly successful RCEP. We believe a prosperous RCEP will be beneficial for not only RCEP economies, but for other economies as well. Hong Kong has already indicated a keen interest in seeking accession into RCEP. And we see much potential for synergy and mutual benefit if we can take our already close economic and trade ties to new heights. And finally, a rather focused, but yet very significant regional economic cooperation development. The GBA has a population of some 86 million people and a combined GDP of about $1.7 trillion. To Belt and Road economies, businesses and investors who are interested in tapping into the fantastic economic opportunities provided by this huge and resourceful market. They are all welcome to come to Hong Kong, base their operations here, and experience and see for themselves our international atmosphere, our fair and just common law system, our simple and low taxation regime, and efficient and business-friendly infrastructure. Perhaps most significantly, they can see and experience firsthand in Hong Kong how a society characterized and underpinned by collaboration and partnership, isolation can work for the common good of everyone. Thank you very much.